with us today Alex Irvin from 1-800-PET-MEDS, Shay O'Reilly from Adobe. Raise your hands, guys. Greg Papalioni from Yahoo. Tim Schaefer from Zappos. And Dave Schwartz from DataPop. So thanks, everybody. I'm going to get audience involvement in this panel if I have to beat it out of you. So don't make me do that. That would be embarrassing for everybody. You know, the panel yesterday, which was hammering around issues of attribution and was very, very well done, raised a lot of the same kinds of issues that we're going to talk about. They talked about a lot of the problems that folks face. We are going to provide all the solutions today. So if you take careful notes, we've got this stuff nailed. So without any further ado, it's really a hard problem, and you know, our company has built our own proprietary system for working with our clients and doing attribution across all of the different stuff that they do. We've built our own statistical modeling system for doing this that we're quite proud of, but we don't kid ourselves to believe that we've actually solved it. I meant to send Lori and team a little video that I like to sort of run to set up the problem of attribution, where it's Game 7 in the NBA Finals. The Bulls are playing, I forget who, but one of those four teams that the Bulls played in the great Jordan era.
Utah Jazz.
Thank you very much. Alex, you're the man. And, you know, it's the last play of the game. There are 10 seconds left, 15 seconds left. Pippen inbounds the ball to Kerr. Kerr dribbles up. He's dribbles the ball over to the wing. He passes back to Pippen. Pippen doesn't really have much. Kicks the ball to Jordan. Jordan blows by his guy. Head fakes, gets one guy up in the air, gets another guy in the air, kicks the ball out to Kerr at the top of the key. Kerr hits the three-pointer to win the game. Bulls win the finals. Woo! Woo-hoo! So if we want to talk about that particular conversion and what contributed to it, attribution gets to be challenging, particularly in the way that most folks think about it. You know, if we give credit to the first touch in that particular conversion, it's Pippen inbounding the ball to Kerr 94 feet from the basket. That doesn't make a lot of sense. If we give credit to the last touch only, Kerr hitting the shot, well, that's not crazy. But it seems like proportional attribution, let's see, Kerr would have 2 touches, Pippen has 2, Jordan has 1. You know, that doesn't make a lot of sense. If we think about it, you know, in a siloed view, all 3 of them have a conversion tied to them. That doesn't make a lot of sense for the business perspective. So, you know, it's a hard problem, and I want to, you know, start by saying, first of all, any attribution system is better than none, right? If every marketing channel is allowed to take full credit for any order they touch, all of your programs are going to be ROI positive except for the business as a whole, which is going to be ROI negative. So we don't want that. First challenge that I want to throw out to the panel is the notion of internal silos. How many of you all in the room have some sort of bonus tied to your teams based on the individual performance of their challenge, or part of their performance is based on that? Does anybody see challenges presented by that? Yeah. So throwing out that notion to the panel, particularly I want to talk to Alex and Tim as advertisers on this. You know, what sort of internal barriers have you found to trying to solve this problem?
I'll start. So we don't really have the bonus or incentive structure, so that's not the issue. But it's more really of just doing your job well and wanting to demonstrate to C-level that you're on top of your game, right? So some of the silos, really, it's just email and direct mail, and then what I manage is pretty much just bringing traffic to the site. So, but the silos that are kind of outside of what we're able to really pull levers on are that email and that direct mail stuff. So. There are some organizational challenges, I'm sure, Tim, that you see them there as well. But I liken this attribution problem that we're looking at to, I've got this big hunk of stone in front of me, and I'm trying to, turn it into the statue of David, right? And so we know it's under there somewhere. And right now we're just starting to kind of chip away at the corners and just get there. But it is a challenge, and certainly organizational issues are part of that.
So I guess for us, I guess I have a question. Can you raise your hand if you're a brand advertiser in the room? So how many of you all have just one report, one single point of revenue reporting for paid search on a daily basis or weekly or whatever? Okay, a couple. How many have 2 or more reports that you could get? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Google Analytics, if you have your own analytics platform, if you have a third-party publishing platform, internal tracking, data warehouse, media mix modeling. So I guess at the end of the day, which one's right? Or, is any of them right or all of them right? So I guess there's a lot of different ways that you can cut and slice the data. And based on kind of if you work with third parties, if they're incentivized, if their contract is incentivized on how much they make for you or how much you spend, which is hopefully kind of directly relational to your ROI. Everyone wants the bigger slice of the pie, and going back to George's point, you're going to be running ROI negative if everyone takes a bigger slice of the pie. So I think we have some issues with that. We have multiple sources of how to look at the reports. So it's just trying to figure out at the end of the day which one is going to be the best for our business.
Yeah, just to add to that, when you see dashboards at the C level, things tend to be broken out by media type. So looking at various channels one by one, and to George's point, they all look positive sometimes because everyone's kind of taking credit for the conversions that they're driving. And very few times are you going to see a C-level report that even looks at attribution. So looking at those conversions that you've gotten on a daily basis, a monthly basis, and then the contributing factors that led to those conversions. So a lot of times you're going to have a data issue where no one in the organization is really seeing that attribution path, that conversion path. And so that's where suboptimal decision making comes from.
If I could just add a little piece of that as well. I get to, working at Yahoo, I have the privilege of working with some of our largest advertisers, and it's the buy-in from the top down when you start talking about attribution is the key, and having individuals at very high levels sort of say, we need to do this, and it's up to you to figure out how, is extremely important.
Yeah, and I would just add that it's very important to be armed in these discussions. Obviously they get very political, there's a lot involved, and you're going to be in your organization, and there should be some discussion across about what works and what doesn't. And so it's really important to understand what's at stake and to make your own case and to state it clearly. The data is going to be there, and there's going to be different points of view. And if you're smart and you know what's going on, you stand a better ground of getting the right thing done and not having your sort of part of the business taken away from you.
Yeah, I think we have found, certainly working with clients, that there are often internal barriers that people don't want to see their numbers change on their reports that they send to their boss, particularly in a negative way, because their bonuses may be tied to performance that all of a sudden looks worse. And so that can be a huge challenge, and I think you're absolutely right, Jay. It starts at the top. You really have to get the C-suite to buy into, all right, A, we're going to do this attribution thing. B, we're all going to agree on a scorecard of sorts. and you know, this gets to that question Dave brought up of, you know, which scorecard do you use? A lot of folks, you know, need another dashboard to log into to see how things are going about as much as they need another hole in their head. So interesting stuff. You know, one of the other questions that you know, we thought we should dive into is, you know, let's suppose that you've cracked that first thing, that everybody sees it's important. The team is all on board saying, you know, okay, we're going to eliminate any sort of compensation issues that would keep us from doing the right thing. We're going to get everybody incentivized to do the right thing for the company rather than the right thing for their particular silo. And, you know, let's say we resolve that challenge. How do we figure out what model to use?
I thought we had that answer. Is that what we're? No, that's what we struggle with. So I mean, we use first in attribution right now within the same session, and I know a lot of people use last in, and that's kind of like the you know, the redheaded stepchild, I guess, of attribution. Everybody says stay away from last in, stay away from last in. But I think maybe we just stumbled into first in within the same session a long time ago, just because when we were maybe almost a decade ago, kind of playing with first in or last in, or choosing what we wanted our web trends, which is what we use because it's cheap web trends reporting. We went with first in because when we did last in, we just saw huge affiliate sales numbers, and we just kind of knew inherently that, okay, these guys are coupon guys, and what's kind of typical behavior? You go to the shopping cart, you visit the brand, and then you go look for a coupon, right? So without any kind of attribution, any thought to attribution, we just saw that number and I said, okay, wait a minute, we can either pay link share $200K if we set it to last click, or we can pay them $30K if we set it to first click. The CEO says, oh, okay, first click. So without even any thought to attribution, it was just kind of, we stumbled into that, and it's kind of what we've been doing since then. And you talk about dashboards and reports. I wouldn't mind another dashboard if it was holistic and gave me a complete view, because I think what we're doing now is we're all looking at a bunch of different reports to get insight into display and insight into comparison shopping and insight into paid, insight into organic. But if there is another dashboard that can kind of give you a holistic view of all of that, and you can see all that data in one place, you know, that's a welcome hole in my head.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I mean, I would say that I don't know the answer. I'm not going to say I do, but I think the most important thing is to try and set up a test where you can and when you can. And this is also going to be an ongoing process. I think we've discussed it. You might, you know, your attribution might not necessarily be set for the next 10 years. You're going to try it out. You're going to figure something out. You're going to see how things change over time. But we've done some things with display where, you know, one of the contentious things is view through. What's it worth? It's really hard to know. But you can run tests, you know, where you show a certain set of your population a public service ad in a certain situation, don't, and then see how much those view-throughs actually do convert. And that's, you know, the tests are always difficult and you can't control for everything, but it's a place to start. And then, you know, you have something empirical to found your attribution on.
I think as George brought up, when you're talking about attribution, any sort of attribution is better than the last click world in which we live right now. But, you know, when you start talking about view-throughs and things like that, there's definitely what we usually do at Yahoo. People don't want an attribution solution from Yahoo because obviously they're buying media from us, so there's sort of a objectivity situation there. But we went through the process of vetting a bunch of different attribution vendors. There are a bunch of them out there, and not to go down the science rat hole, I don't know if you're going to bring that up or not, but we find that the clients are most happy.
We live in that rat hole.
Yes, that's my world. Clients are most happy when you can apply a specific sort of well thought through methodology and you know, formula to look at all of your data and make sure that not that, you know, an impression served 6 months ago should get some sort of credit for something. It also depends on the product. we'll think, you know, flowers versus cars and that sort of thing. But it's the scientific approach to looking at all the data and weighting the different pieces based on a certain formula within a user's media stack that's where we see the most the happiest clients.
Yeah, I think planning and observation before deciding on a model is so key. I think you see so many brands really jumping into an attribution model because it was sold by their campaign management vendor or their analytics vendor, as opposed to going back and looking at the data and taking a year of data of purchases and really understanding how many touches are driving those conversions, what order are they happening in. In Alex's case, it sounded like 90+% of the conversions were coming from one touch, and that type of observation drives a model that I think works well for his business. And so before jumping in, I think you need to take a step back and really observe what's been happening across all business cycles, seasonality, and when you've run different types of campaigns, and that'll help you arrive at the appropriate model for your business.
So I want to take a step back. So there was a question yesterday at the attribution panel, how many in-house brand advertisers actually have PhDs or coders within marketing? Not too many people raise their hands. So I think the problem is the brand advertisers, and to another point yesterday, they have just fires that they put out throughout the day. They have their daily job. Attribution's kind of an afterthought. So we rely on the technology vendors, but who have these PhDs and these coders, and they have these sophisticated algorithms and whatnot, but they aren't playing as well as I guess the brand advertisers would like, at least from my perspective, across all these platforms, so that we could actually get to the point of being ROI positive, looking at this holistic view. So I would challenge the technology vendors to integrate better, work together, try and have better algorithms across platforms, so there isn't double counting of revenue. There isn't, I guess people can be more sophisticated, and sure, you might lose some revenue, but you're going to kind of gain a better partnership with the clients, and hopefully, at the end of the day, we can be better advertisers.
Yeah, great point. And we have invested a lot in building out our stats modeling approach to building custom models for every client and revising those models based on the data. One of the really fascinating things, and this gets back to the silo issue a little bit, that what we find is the individual stakeholders, the email marketing manager, the affiliate manager, the display manager, the paid search manager, the SEO, all have a very strong interest in how the attribution modeling is done, and they all have a very strong opinion about how that ought to work, and those opinions are in conflict. They turn to us to say, well, look, there's certainly better ways to do this than some tiered approach, some sort of time decay, some sort of, if you're first you get this percentage, and if you're in the middle you get something else, and last. There's a right way to do this mathematically, and we say yes, and we invested so much time and energy and thought into solving this problem, and we're very excited about it. And they say, great, how does it work? And we say, do you have like 6 years to study math so we can explain it in a way that that makes sense? And that again raises that issue of trust, that okay, well, if we can't really explain the math in a way that makes sense to everybody in the room, are they going to trust the outcome? And not just a matter of trusting really hairy-looking statistics, but trusting that we as an agency are creating a model that doesn't serve our interest rather than the client's interest.
Yeah, that's big. I mean, so we've been looking at the same web trends reports for 10 years, right? It's the devil that we know. Our CEO looks at that and he trusts that. He knows, okay, when I send an email, I'm going to see this number show up in my report, and it makes him feel good. And being able to trust that our vendor or whoever's looking over this attribution process, the people that have done the math and people that know the science, I mean, that's key, because one mistake there and a quarter of bad earnings and the shares I own go down. I mean, nobody wants that, right? So it is, and that's, I think, the problem that we wrestle with is knowing, the devil that we know, looking at these reports, but just kind of seeing that there's some data in there that we can further optimize, and then how much trust you're able to push off onto the scientists, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a huge challenge, and I feel for you, George, there. I mean, we're in the same boat with, we do a lot of quantitative modeling on the SEM side, and a lot of the challenge is explaining in a way that's clear and understandable and makes business sense, and that doesn't involve, the more complicated it gets, the less buy-in you get. You need something pithy and punchy, but you don't want to oversimplify. So ideally, if you can get something maybe like case studies, bite-sized things like the thing I just mentioned, it's a test, it shows it, it illustrates it, and maybe you get an aggregation of those to figure out how you're doing things across channels, and that helps you get buy-in.
I mean, just looking again across all of the different clients and agencies I work with, it's the change is the biggest barrier. Nobody wants to sort of go through the pain. It's not painful, but somewhat painful process of changing a measurement methodology. But again, the trust and trusting someone who's making the recommendations for working with different vendors and that sort of thing. I mean, that's the big key.
Yeah, I'm going to fire this one at Tim, picking up on this notion of, you've got these trusted metrics that you've been looking at for years, all of which are about to change dramatically. One of the other big challenges, and it's really an ongoing challenge, is, if, again, the idealized world, we've gotten buy-in from the C-suite, they've said, yes, let's make it happen. Yes, we're going to trust this particular model for doing the attribution. We think these guys are straight shooters and they're going to do it right and not in a way that feathers their own nest. Great. Now, all of a sudden, year-over-year performance numbers for my channel look awful, when prior to this, they look great. And the thing is, they're going to keep looking awful for a whole year until you catch up to the tail. And are the bosses going to remember that, there's a reason we're down 20% year over year, and it doesn't have to do with me sucking. So Tim, how do you deal with the Tim sucks all of a sudden issue?
Create an automated rule for my inbox that whenever my CFO emails me, it automatically says that we changed our attribution model starting today or yesterday or whenever. So I guess it's you just have to take the pill and swallow it. That I don't know. I guess going back to like all the brand advertisers, like if you're used to making $100 a day, and all of a sudden you change this attribution model, and now it's saying 70, are you willing to accept that? Yes? No? No one? I guess I have to, so I will. And then you just have to try and optimize accordingly and accept different ROI metrics or CPA, CPL goals, and try and just continue to do your best and press on and understand that, in theory, this is going to be for the betterment of the company. So get over yourself, and it's not just about your one channel, but to still have a job in 6 months and keep pressing on.
Simple.
I think if you really get that, if you truly get that buy-in from C-level, then that probably won't be as big of a problem. I mean, if everybody's on the same page and they agree on that attribution model, whatever it is and whatever's best for your business, then hopefully they'll understand ahead of time that this number is going to look better, this number is going to look worse.
Yeah, and the other thing today, you can test things like this. I mean, you can segment audiences, you can segment by geo, things like that, and you can run a test of a new model without rolling it out and crushing your numbers across the board. And so once you do that isolated test, you roll that data up, and you have some expectation of what's going to happen if you roll that new model out nationwide.
Yeah, great point.
I've also found that when when you're in a meeting with an agency or a client, you have to set the expectation that, their main question is, okay, so let's turn this on and let's start, attributing. And you have to set the expectation that it's definitely gonna take a little bit of time, and you're not just gonna see some results, the next day, that sort of thing.
Great point.
It's going to be rocky if you do change, just because you used to make that $100 and all of a sudden you're making 60, and other channels, the SEO guy or affiliate guy, his numbers might change or her numbers might change. So just realize you're kind of all in the same ship together, and you just gotta probably have a lot of meetings with the executives or whoever looks at the reports and realize that this is for the betterment, but there might be some stones that get turned over that don't show great things, and just go from there.
And I think I like your idea of the auto reply to the CFO that reminds him that this happened on this date, because we do see that institutional memory issue being very short term, and 6 months in, if some consultant comes in and says, well, I've found your problem, Tim has been sucking for the last 6 months, and sorry Tim, I'm not picking on you, but Shay, sorry.
I was just thinking that as to your opening remarks, I mean, there is no choice. You have to attribute. I mean, that's one way to sell it to the C-level is, this is the future, it's sink or swim. It may make your numbers look worse, but that's reality, and your competitors are doing that, and they'll beat you if you're not using the right attribution.
What about the trust issue of attribution? How many of you all have some sort of third-party attribution system working? How many of you have an internal system? How many of you have no system whatsoever? So a lot of folks doing this in-house, about the same number doing this outsourced. Is there a trust issue with who's providing the data? If the attribution provider is comped based on how much spend is going through the system, are they incented to answer the question in a way that solves Wanamaker's conundrum? If I know what 50% of my advertising is wasted and I stop wasting it, the attribution provider makes less money. Does anybody see that as a challenge at this point?
Hopefully you didn't negotiate the contract that way.
Well, that's not how we do our pricing, because we didn't see that as being a smart way to go. But others, thoughts on that? What about the engines? I mean, do people trust Yahoo? Do people trust Google to solve this problem, or are they inherently disinterested in solving the problem?
Yeah, we don't. I'll start. We don't, just because it's we're not comfortable. In order to do that, you really have to share all of your data, everything, and we're just not comfortable sharing all of that data, especially conversion, but really all of it with Google or really any of the engines who, you just don't want to share conversion data with the same person that sells you advertising. Just seems like inherently a bad idea and a conflict of interest. That's our take.
What we found is, I mean, there have only been just a couple of negative articles written about Yahoo lately, but what we found is that...
And that's just from Chris, right?
And that's... what we found is that, we are a trusted partner, and when we do make recommendations to our clients and to our agencies, they know that we've gone through the process of vetting these different vendors and their methodologies and the people there and that sort of thing, and building relationships. And we found that the recommendations that we give are trusted as well.
That's cool. I wanted to pick up on something that Chris brought up from the world of sort of the agencies of record and dealing with particularly brands that are doing a whole lot more marketing offline than they do online, recognizing that wow, if we crack this nut online, have we really solved anything? Because, you know, how much of what's happening online is really being influenced by what we're doing offline? PetMeds obviously does some television advertising itself.
Yeah, that's the same. We had a discussion, a mail thread about kind of the demand generation media versus demand capture media, right? And how it kind of swung from earlier in the decade where it was all generation, now it's all capture because it's super easy, and Google's made it real easy for us, and Bing, of course. So when looking at attribution, I guess we think online really in that space of, when you look at demand generation, really I guess we think about kind of social and display, I guess, kind of being the things that will generate that demand. But for us, it's oftentimes more, it's the TV ads. So if you guys are watching any of the news channels, or hopefully if you have a pet, you've seen us, 1-800-PET-MEDS, buy from us. I got a small mouth to feed at home, so keep buying. But it's, so that's it, and that's kind of where, you know, the referee hands the ball to Steve Kerr before he even inbounds it. Because if we don't do that TV advertising, people aren't, you know, going to search for our brand. And a lot of times we see when that TV spend goes down that they won't even search for products that we sell, our non-brand keyword portfolio. But it's, you know, it's difficult because then it's the fine line between attribution and tying every order to what you're spending online, and then just, you know, delving into just the overall media mix model, which is kind of what we go by overall. But that's our take.
Yeah, the offline is a huge challenge, and obviously has a major impact in the search world. And I think that's another case where you can test, ideally, if you have TV flights, you look at how they go, you look at how that affects your performance landscape over it, and then you can say, all right, this much is attributable to TV, and when I'm running this flight in the future, I know to add this much dollars to my search spend and expect a certain ROI, and then dial back when I get rid of it and see what sort of the lifetime of it is. And also, I mean, in some ways, when you look at offline, search or digital can be also demand generating when you think about offline purchases in stores and things like that, which is sort of something that falls into
both ways. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so if you attribute, some of that credit would get pushed to TV, but some of the offline store credit would get pushed to digital.
Yeah, I think you can really, as a marketer, you can really use that data coming in from Google, Yahoo, your SEO tools, your SEM tools, to really understand what's going on much higher up in the funnel. We work with a lot of clients that use their branded search data in order to do that, and these guys have gotten really good on the demand capture piece in optimizing and managing against their branded terms. But then they can use that data in terms of how much revenue they're generating on those terms, how much traffic's coming in through SEM and SEO on those terms, to understand how those upper funnel behaviors are really impacting purchase from an online perspective and an offline perspective.
I guess the problem with Google and Yahoo, if you use their conversion tracking, is they still don't have the full picture. So you can look at how well you think keywords are doing within, I guess, you know, Google, there's a couple conversions, and Yahoo and a couple conversions. But if someone did a search on Yahoo and Google, then they buy, then both get a conversion. So you have $100 when both of them say that they each have $100, so you really made $200. So once again, I think there's a problem with that. There's just a fundamental flaw with all I guess overall with attribution. But that's once again, like, we can partner better with all these technology companies. We can really show that $100 was split between those two keywords, 50 on Yahoo and 50 on Google.
Yeah, yeah. In my view, I think, you know, the modeling can go so far, but there's still a huge opportunity for testing. As Shay pointed out, there are ways to hack at, you know, how much are newspaper circulars affecting search behavior, both for your brand and non-brand. You know, how much does that create awareness and increase click-through rates on your ads because people have seen you on television? All of these things are really, really difficult to tease out of the data. Big data though it is, it's incomplete data. And I think having that awareness that it's incomplete data and that's okay, you know, in the category of not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, I think is an important mindset. Greg? Were you?
Yeah, I mean, when just at a very high level, you're trying to figure out, you know, display advertising drives search. You know that people who are exposed to display advertising are more likely to perform a search. And there are studies that show that when they do perform that search, they're more likely to perform a general search than they are a brand search. And that was a ComScore study, I believe. So that begs the question, is that search, that brand search at the end of the day, is that a navigational event or is that an influencing event? To me, it's more navigational than influencing. And then, you know, the big question is, so what was the other stuff that influenced that last behavior? And that's the question that you want to answer. And, you know, having a trusted partner in answering that question, that's why we're here.
Yeah, and I want to throw one bomb, and I'm not throwing it at Yahoo.
Rob?
Even though they're pretty bunker ready at this point. You know, I think one of the things that we've seen be a real challenge to the trust issue of, you know, can we trust this approach to attribution is, you know, a lot of the studies that you see out there produced sometimes by engines, sometimes by agencies that have a pretty strong agenda in creating a bigger to-do about the conversion funnel than maybe there ought to be. You know, I think a lot of these studies, when you scratch the surface, they're pretty poorly done. They're done with an obvious agenda, and I've argued vociferously, as Dave Tan can attribute if he's here, that, you know, doing those kinds of things and walking into a CMO's office and saying, hey, look, you know, you need to be spending more money online because this is driving your whole business. You know, I think that has really hurt the credibility of what we're doing. And if we take a more transparent approach, we might be better served in the long run. Thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, one example is recently I was at a financial client, and there's this idea that, you know, non-brand searches drive brand searches just within search, so not discussing display attribution. And, you know, sometimes that's the case and sometimes it's not, but we, you know, the platform we use can track that, and you see the clicks, and we run a simple report and we just show it to them. We say, you know, you would expect there to be a lot of sort of general searches leading to brand searches, but, you know, counterintuitively, in some sense, we didn't see that in this case. And they were shocked because a couple weeks before that, they had McKinsey Consulting come in and tell them they needed to buy more non-brand terms to drive. And it wasn't based, and they paid a lot of money for that advice, even though it wasn't data-based. And
yeah, and this is a case where you have all the data.
Yeah.
You can answer that question.
yeah, those are simple attribution questions.
Right? Yeah. So I've got about 5 minutes left. I would love to grab from panelists. You know, we would say that one of the cool things that we find in having attribution data, actionable information or insights is a little bit questionable, but just getting insights is kind of cool. Like, you know, one of the things that we found, again, I'm not sure what you do with this information, but we did a study looking at the interaction of Facebook and email and found that the people who are following you on Facebook are also hugely disproportionately likely to be on your email list and responding to emails. Pretty interesting stuff, not terribly surprising, but very cool, and you get this from having an attribution system hooked up that's looking at all of these things, that you can look at these touch paths. So my challenge to our panelists and then to the audience is, you know, what's a cool thing you've pulled out of attribution data that is an example of that?
Yeah, I think with that, that's, you know, and then that leads further to the question of, is that just correlation or is it causation? Like, which one of those is the chicken? For us, it's, you know, I guess that affiliate one was a big one. That was years ago, but just recently, again, we still just have this big block of stone, and we're just starting to chip away at it. But, you know, some of the things we're chipping away, the first thing is just noting that affiliates are, you know, they just seem to be handing out coupons to people that are in the checkout line. Again, not terribly surprising, but it makes me feel better as I'm deciding, you know, how to structure these payouts and what to pay on and what not to pay out, just to have more data to back up, you know, just that kind of feeling that we've got. So yeah, we're able to see just the interactions, and really the 90%, just under 90% of our interactions or our sales only touch one channel. So we thought it would be much greater. We thought attribution may provide this magic bullet where there's 6 or 7 passes before the basket, but we're seeing that almost 9 times out of 10 it's Pippen giving it to Jordan and letting him do what he does.
Yeah, that's a great distinction you made there, Alex, between the correlation and the causation. I mean, we've been talking about the tracking, getting the data foundation there, and that's the correlation, seeing what happened, and then the causation is really the really tricky part, figuring out what drove what. And one interesting study I really liked that we did was a display retargeting test, because the question is, well, wouldn't they have come back anyway? So how much credit should I give those display ads? And so we did this test I mentioned before, where there's a control group, half the population got public service ads, half got actual ads, and we got to see over time how many more people converted on one with the potent ads. And it was there was a lift, and it came in at about 20%, which is a common sort of view through rating, and this was view through based as well. So that was interesting that it confirmed that, and it was also interesting that there's a big distinction over time. The first 2 days there was very little gap, so there was an indication, and then it grew after like 2 to 5 days. It got pretty big, and then after that there wasn't much data. But it's very interesting. That sort of showed something that we hadn't thought about before, that maybe there's people who are ready to come back and are going to come back anyway, and then there's people after 2 to 3 days, they need to be prodded and reminded, and that's when your spend is most effective there.
Yeah, and again, similar to that, we've had clients that I tend to believe in data and don't believe it because somebody says it, but look for the numbers. We've had clients who believe that impressions should get 0 credit. They have no influence whatsoever, and being able to pull out of the logs, well, look, here are 40 instances where somebody just saw an ad and then was on your website within a minute and placed the order within 10 minutes. It's hard to argue that wasn't an influencing event.
Yeah, and I think, the coolest thing for us about attribution is, I started with this hypothesis that Yahoo, and if you couldn't tell, I'm more of a display guy than a search guy, but Yahoo is undervalued in origination and assist events, and attribution is something that's proving that out in a real way, and that's a big deal for us.
I would just say we've found that bidding on our own brand terms has generated more clicks and a lot more revenue than just having the #1 organic. So if you want more info, come talk to me, but sake of time.
Yeah, we run a lot of programs that drive offline performance for our advertisers. So we've seen in a number of cases when clients are able to tie back the data from search to offline, you're seeing multiples of 4, 5, 6x in offline sales driven by search behavior online. So that's some of the interesting things we've seen.
How about folks in the audience? A cool thing you've learned from looking at attribution data? Anybody? Anybody? Euler?
I think so. We have over 70 customers, and we did actually a study on this across customers. And I think the fascinating thing is that how it varies. Because actually, when we did this study, we found that over 50% on average was multi-touch. So, if 1-800-PET-SPENS is 90%, that just goes to show you, I think, the difference that can occur. So I think it's very, company, particular business dependent.
Yeah, great point. And we would say, in our experience, and Matt, who actually knows something, will verify this. We're seeing something like across a bunch of clients, 70% are unassisted, single channel, 2/3, something like that. Yeah, but again, your mileage varies, and it varies a lot, and you shouldn't assume that it's on one side of the spectrum or the other without looking at it.
Right, and that tends to be single channel online. And so that takes offline out of the equation.
And again, if you're a company that is online only, that may not be such a bad assumption. If you spend 90% of your marketing dollars offline and have a huge brick and mortar footprint, maybe that's a lousy assumption. Other questions from the audience? No.
Just ask it, we'll repeat it.
I didn't know if she was speaking or if
Okay, I'll just be loud. My question is for Alex and Tim. You both mentioned at different points having kind of like a different dashboard or having something that you knew would be bright, basically, and having that special report. Whose responsibility is it to provide you that? Is that something that you should be building internally? Is that your search platform's responsibility? Is it your web analytics tool? Who do you expect that attribution across channels to come from?
Yeah, I'll go. We can't build it internally. I mean, we don't have the PhDs and we don't have the programmers to do that. So I would look for that to come from where we spend the most of our media dollars, and that would be with search and display. So that's who I would look to, search and display providers.
So I would say for paid search, if you just look at it in a silo, our third-party provider, we would look for them for really good attribution. But that's only, once again, kind of one piece of pie. They aren't looking at email data and other channels. So it would just have to come from internal or some other analytics provider that can overreach every channel and have all those touch points. But once again, you kind of get into the point of offline marketing, and that just goes back to probably just back to internal advertisers. So besides getting everything done throughout the day that you need to, just brand advertisers have to do a really good job of really thinking about attribution and sitting down with a good set of people internally and figuring out what needs to be done.
I'd say it's where you spend that money and who do you trust to have all of that data with. That's I guess the real key for us.
I'm getting the hook sign from Chris, so we will wrap up. But thank you all.
Yeah, please join me in thanking.